Hi everyone, welcome to my new vlog to Vegan Spot. This is also a YouTube video. Also, if you do not know Spanish, fluent Spanish, don't listen to it. Ahora hago un blog ahora y voy a leer un libro en inglés, así que por ahí. Now, skip that part. Let's start the book. I'm going to read, not the whole book, but it's We're But Two US Presidents. And let's start. We're But Two US Presidents by Brianna Dutton. First president, George Washington. Term 1789 to 1797. Party, unaffiliated. Nickname, Father of his country. Claim to fame, being the first president. Born Pope's Creek, Virginia. First Lady Martha Washington. Married 1759 to 1799. I walk on untrodden ground. There is scarcely any part of me, of my conduct, which may not hereafter be drawn into precedent. Why, he is weird. While general of the Continental Army, Washington refused a salary and asked only to be compensated for his expenses. Then he spent 160,074 millions in today's dollars on personal expenses, education costs, and travels. So there's a picture of George Washington. Hello. George Washington was not born with a silver spoon, but he didn't exactly come from humble beginnings. His father was a plantation owner in the 18th century Virginia, and he provided a comfortable life for his wife and 9 children. George helped manage the farm, but he could also hang with the aristocrats, wealthy noblemen, and wear silver stockings. He had one eye on greatness from an early age, longing to move above his family station, and he succeeded. By the end of his life, Washington helped create the longest-lasting republic of the world has ever seen, the United States of America. Monumental mistakes. Born into a second marriage, John Washington went through life trying to prove himself. He didn't get the same formal education that his older half-brothers received, since his father passed away when he was 11, leaving the family with less money to spare and in need of more help around the plantation. But he was naturally smart and curious, lover of good adventure. He spent his teens surveying, mapping out, and explored wilderness and secured the position of the county surveyor by age 17. But war came calling, and Washington was all too eager to answer. In the years leading up to 1753, Britain and the American colonies was arguing with its eternal enemy, France, over territory in North America. In one of his first missions as the leader of a Virginia militia company, Washington and his men launched a surprise attack in disputed territory and killed 10 Frenchmen, including the messenger who was just delivering news to the British. His troops retreated to a nearby fort, which was eventually surrounded by the French, and he was forced to surrender the battle. The French and Indian War, part of the larger 7 Years' War, was soon ignited, but a humiliated Washington resigned his position. He would not be off the battlefield for long. He later served as an aide to important British general during the war, gaining valuable expressions. Did you know that Washington wore dentures made of hippo tusks and human teeth? There's a picture of a hippo. Gulp. crowned with the crown. After the French and Indian War, France had control of most of North America. Washington's Heights had won. There was new tension growing. American colonists, wait a second. Okay. American colonists were getting for the sake of answering to the Parliament, the British government in London. The war with the French had rendered the British broke, and the Parliament decided to increase the taxes in the colonies to make up the difference. Many colonists, both the powerful and the powerless, protested. After all, the colonists couldn't even elect someone to represent them in Parliament. Eventually, there was also a debate over the very idea of a monarch, a king or a queen, being born into such a powerful position. After years of protest, discussions, and conflict, most people were ready for independence, and Washington agreed that the British had to go. First, the colonists needed a leader. There's Washington. Dressed to impress. George Washington wanted to remind people that he was a battle test and that he looked good in uniform. After a year of service in the Continental Congress in 1775, he showed up in his old military uniform and sat quietly waiting for everyone to notice. Since he was the only one with any real military experience, he had a tremendous reputation. Congress unanimously voted him the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army. He responded humbly, "I do not think myself equal to the command," which might have been true. His only experiences in war included losing, retreating, and surrendering, but by this point, there was water under the bridge. His first command was to himself: read some books and study up how to be a general. That's him, dressed to impress. Presidential soundbite. Historians say Washington could be so pompous, his contemporaries accused him of being bored with his clothes done and his hair powdered, and making a stately bow to his mother. The microphone. Framing for the presidency. The Revolutionary War lasted 6 years and had a lot of ups and downs for Washington. He lost more battles than he won, and fighting defensively was his still-to-go tactic, but he was a good leader. He kept the spirits of his troops high through grueling weather and gut-wrenching defeats. In the end, inspiring them to greatness, he himself became great. Whether he was growing funds and supplies from the Congress or forming a secret spy ring, Washington proved he was the best man for the job. And with the help of officers who were better at tactics, he led his men against the most powerful mixer in the Western world and won. Vices of the President. Some of the presidents Washington said were due to his legendary temper. After getting into heated arguments with his Vice President John Adams, Washington stopped inviting Adams to meetings or asking his advice. He set the stage for vice presidents not being as involved in formal government business. That's a funny picture of John Adams with the mouse. First things first. The Revolutionary War was over, but now came the hard part. Now you may want to configure it and not put it so fast. On normal, I'll lower the speed because I'm going to talk fast. About the best way to govern the land. At first, Washington retired to his plantation, happy to be home. But the Articles of Confederation, the document that outlined the laws and the land before the U.S. Constitution was written, created 13 separate states without a strong central government. They done this on purpose, as a reaction of what they considered British tyranny or abuse of power. Not much got done since the states couldn't agree on economic and foreign policies. Washington agreed to be president of the Continental Convention, which was supposed to change the Articles of Confederation, but ended up creating a new foundation for the country state. instead. Using a framework provided by James Madison, men from each state, except Rhode Island, which didn't send any delegates, worked together to write a new constitution that increased federal national power. From there, Washington was the only step away from being unanimously voted as the first president of the United States. So, at this rate, I think I'm going to do a second part of this video. Practical precedents. Because everyone trusted Washington, they left the president's job description rather murky. It would be up to him to figure out everything from shaping foreign policy to throwing dinner parties. He knew the eyes of the nation were upon him, so he acted carefully. He wouldn't be a veto bill until 1792, 3 years after becoming president. Fancy Royal King. It was not a surprise that people wanted to hang out with Washington. He was a hero, but small talk wasn't his favorite. Alexander Hamilton suggested a weekly receptions on Tuesday afternoons for men only. At 3 p.m., Washington would greet the men wearing black velvet and yellow gloves, at his word, of course. Everyone would stand in a circle and bow, because Washington didn't approve handshaking. Washington addressed each man at once, and a few words would be exchanged. At 4 p.m. on the dot, it was over. Apparently, nobody enjoyed it. Thomas versus Alexander. Washington became successful during the war by surrounding himself with people whose expertise made him a stronger leader. He wanted his government to have similar setups for success. Picture Hamilton versus Jefferson. He knew he didn't know everything, so he created the first presidential cabinet, a body of advisors. Instead of storing plates and bowls, Washington's cabinet stored his most trusted confidants, whom he called on for advice. Unfortunately, two of his most trusted advisors were also enemies. Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton fought about everything. As a president, Washington had to take sides. He often sided with Hamilton. Jefferson eventually quit in protest. They started another president. Political parties. Long live Mr. President. Washington had just spent 6 years ridding the land of one monarch. He wasn't about to become one himself. People accustomed to a king didn't understand during his inauguration. They sang a version of God Save the King and Long Live George Washington, and put laurels on his head. Instead of bedecking himself in jewels and a crown, Washington wore a simple brown suit, which started another president. Presidents wearing regular people clothes, taking care of business. A big part of the beef between Hamilton and Jefferson was about money. Hamilton was a Federalist, and with a big bank run by businessmen, he wanted to encourage industry and trade. Jefferson was a Democratic Republican, and wanted farmers to rule America. He worried that a big bank would control the government and people. Hamilton's plan was also included a tax hike on whiskey. Farmers across the United States did not like the sound of that. They just went to war to an unfair taxation. Many rural residents in Pennsylvania decided they protest, just like they did against Parliament and King George. President George was having none of that. When he asked his cabinet for advice, they couldn't agree, so Washington decided for himself. He settled up once more and led 13,000 troops into Pennsylvania. Upon hearing they were coming, the protesters gave up and went home before Washington even arrived. There was no need for battle. As a result, Washington's show of power strengthened the powers of the president to boot.